podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
No question about that. It's supported by you, our listeners, through patreon.com/NQAT pod, where you can get access to our weekly ad-free bonus episode talking about football around the Premier League and Europe. Hey Wayne, so we've just seen Brentford 1, Manchester United 3, which was, at least in the second half, a much improved performance. But before we get to the conversation about that, I owe you an apology, don't I? On last week's pod, I said I'd never met you and you quickly corrected me. We did indeed meet, and I was going through it in my head and I remember it. And I remember the evening and all the various conversations I had. Yeah. So.
I know. Clearly more memorable one night tryst for me than it was for you. That's fine.
Well,
I'm all right.
There's a few people said that, but, we won't go there. Yeah, it was interesting. I'm pretty sure it was one of it used to be a bloggers meetup in London called Socrates, which a guy called Terry Dufflin organised. I think it was at his agency's headquarters.
Yeah.
They had the game on big screen and a few people were there. I remember chatting to them because I might be mixing evenings up, but I'm pretty sure you and Andy Frankos were there, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a long, so that would be 2010 World Cup.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Something tells me it was the Suarez handball affair long before he became a villain for us.
Uruguay versus Ghana. Wow. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure Michael Cox was there. And Jack Pitt-Brooke was there as well because he was writing the City blog at the time. We had a long conversation about that. Good times, as was United versus Brentford. Eventually, what do you make of this game then?
The typical game of two halves, right?
Yeah.
We were so bad in that first half. And it was, I don't know, sometimes we don't look like a football team. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes we go
frequently,
and you don't know what they're doing. Like, you look at the way that we played, and one observation I tweeted out was that sometimes they're so careless in possession, some of our players, that you actually don't know what they're trying to do with the ball. I mean, they'll hoof it clear, but they'll just hoof it high in the air, directionless. And then it's the same with movement. Obviously, we know that, the players don't always move for each other. Sometimes they'll just play I don't want to say safe pass. They'll play the obvious pass and they don't think about the players that are around the player that they're passing it to. He's so careless sometimes. And you look back at, I don't know if it's like a trend that's been coming into United since even the Fergie days, but I don't want to say admired, but Chelsea under Mourinho and the post-Mourinho era, even under like Grant and Ancelotti and Villas-Boas, maybe it's to do with the personnel, the likes of Terry and Lampard. They were always a lot smarter in possession than what we were. The clearances would find one of their players. And I know that United take risks, and that's why we love watching United play, but this isn't taking risks. It's carelessness in possession.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And it was so bad tonight for the first half in particular. You had a lot of clearances like that were just going high in the air. You had a lot of these aimless sort of like just pass the ball for the sake of it.
Basic mistakes, isn't it? I was watching that first half especially, and it seemed like just the very, very basics of a simple 5-yard pass were going astray from players who are way better than that, and you shouldn't expect it from them. I can't put my finger on why that is happening, but it's definitely happening.
Exactly. That's the thing, isn't it? It's got to be carelessness because the players are good enough. They're playing at a team that really one of the top 5 teams in the country, and the players are obviously mostly good enough for that. So you can't really doubt that. I know that this was a criticism under Solskjaer. What are they meant to be doing? Blah blah blah. But competently coached to some extent to get these basics right. So why are they being so careless? Is it to do with the fact that you've got an opponent who are a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more on it than what we are, and sometimes that makes us look more careless than what we are.
I think that's true. Any team that presses against United gets some. I mean, they've all seen it, right?
Yeah,
they get some joy.
exactly. Yeah, and do you know what? Like, we can complain about that, but then let's flip the switch and say, look, how good we were in the second half was a mirror of how bad we were. It was unbelievable. We were so good. McTominay excelled. One of his best 45 minutes that I've seen him play for us, and he wasn't particularly brilliant in the first half, but the way that he was breaking up and playing the second half, even seemed to make Fernandes play a little bit better. I don't know if it's just a matter of a couple of players standing up and taking responsibility for it, but obviously the football in the second half, for 25 minutes at least, was very good.
I think they pushed Ronaldo a little further forward as well. I mean, just one like an observation, not being a tactical genius or anything, but it just seemed to me that Ronaldo and Bruno were getting in each other's zone all the time. And since Fred was pushing quite far forward,
and
it's proven fruitful for him. What's that, 5 assists in his last few games now for him? Everyone was like on top of each other. The Greenwood and Elanga were very, very wide, and the fullback kept coming inside. So you had this whole cluster of players. It seemed a bit of a jumble tactically, to me at least. I think they went back to some basics of who was supposed to be in what zone for the second half, at least for the first 20 minutes of that second half. And that helped a lot. It helped stretch Brentford. But I kind of thought before this game that Brentford would cause some problems just because of the nature of their game. They have a model which is based on high intensity, high press, because they don't have players of the quality. Obviously, most of that squad have come up with them from the Championship. But they can match people and exceed other teams for physicality. And it just seems to cause United a lot of problems. I wouldn't be surprised if this is not part of the reason Maguire's been out of the team. I know he had fitness issues, but he just seems to get caught with that quite a lot, which he did as soon as he came on as well, which is unfortunate for him. Ralf managed to sort that out at half-time. And the good part of this was just how sharp United were in that second half. Still boss possession. I had something like 70% possession in that first half, but just did nothing of any note with it at all. And Elanga's goal was United's first shot on target, unbelievably.
Yeah. You're quite right about the way that they changed the shape. Not so much the shape, but the way that they changed the dynamism of that shape, because they seemed to be a little bit more compact. We talk about the fullbacks, and we've talked about this before, I'm sure, Ed, about how many formations that Ralph's running through. So he's trying this new one, which is quite right. Yep. It looked like it was going to be a 4-2-3-1 on paper at Villa, but then obviously you could see it was a 4-3-3 and Fernandes was dropping a little bit left and deep. So
yes, right.
Fred is almost like playing this false 10 position, which obviously has been fruitful. And and it was bringing the rewards again tonight, because obviously he played quite well.
His ball to Elanga, wasn't it? I mean, just a
magnificent
wand of a left foot. One for the football cliches pod there, isn't it? It's always a wand, isn't it, when it's your left foot? Magic ball again from Fred. Who'd have thunk it? Fred as our leading creator.
But Elanga, by the way, magnificently taken, like the flicking it up and heading it in. I was expecting. Do you remember back in the day when Rio always used to tweet silks, #silks?
Yes.
I was half expecting that one because it was so classy. But then the Ronaldo chest down, obviously it's kind of a thing that deserves an assist by itself because it was so magnificent.
Hell of a pass, wasn't it?
Yeah, something of Cantona in it, wasn't it? You know what I mean? That sort of Gallic shrug.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be too negative about this. We won 3-1 in a game that I could have fully expected us to drop points in. Because Brentford are a great. They've taken the division by storm for a promoted side. They've done really well. So I wasn't too optimistic about our chances, especially the way that they play, because it's obviously, like we said, it's engineered to cause a team like us problems when we're in a passive move like we were in the first half. But then Rangnick had commented on Saturday, where he talked about how he didn't want to change the game. He didn't want to change the team. He didn't want to make any substitutes, and maybe he should have done it. And I thought that's automatically causing a problem for the next time you're in a decent position away from home, like we were, because he's automatically now he's thinking, what am I going to do, stick or twist? And I'm sure we've had this conversation before, and maybe it's the kind of thing that we'll always have. Every United fan will have had in infinitum until these players are changed. There's no safety with numbers when you put these players together. If you watch that 5 minutes back at the end, I'm not saying that we weren't ever duly threatened after they scored their first. We saw it through, fine. But if you watch that last 5 minutes back, and just watch the aimless way that the players are just kicking the ball anywhere. It's like they just presume that
there's some panic there, wasn't there?
Yeah, and they didn't need to be, especially when you look and you've got the numbers. You've got the numbers now. You've got a number. You've got a compact shape. You should be able to see it through. But I think they just look and they think, oh, well, we've got the numbers, so it doesn't matter where we kick the ball. Somewhere, it should bounce to land somewhere.
And it just kept coming back at United as a result, didn't it? And fortunately, Brentford weren't able to take the chances. I mean, they created 4 or 5 good chances in the first half as well. Yeah, a couple of good saves from David De Gea, smart one from Tony near in, and a couple of other shots that on another day Brentford might have taken. And at the end, they did cause some pressure. Fortunately, they didn't get the second because we know how fragile mentally this team is, United team is. They probably would have collapsed, wouldn't they? It was interesting on Saturday because I hadn't seen all the post-match comments. It's interesting you said that because instinctively I felt that he'd waited quite a lot too long to make the changes. And it almost seemed that it was Gerrard who had been more proactive. And for the manager who's only got, 3 years of experience as a manager against Rangnick, the father of Gegenpressing, it was a fair amount of kudos to Gerrard. But tonight, he made them only 5 minutes earlier. And he made a change with Rashford coming on for Ronaldo, presumably to try and stretch the game, worked. And Maguire, presumably to try and have some more solidity, sort of worked, with Maguire getting a semi-assist for Brentford's goal. So maybe there was a hint there that Rangnick's going to be a bit more proactive. And it seems he's still learning. This was same system ostensibly, Bruno a bit further forward as against Villa, but a very different sort of way it was executed, at least for the first 45. And it feels like it's been that case for every single game now. Just a bit of a change each time, formation change, personnel change, the way it's executed. He's still trying to work it out. He hasn't got much longer left to work this out.
I was making that comment about, it was more about to do with the Pogba thing, everything that's come out with that, and this idea that he's going to be playing him as soon as he's back in the side. And he made a comment about, what was it? That it's going to be a shop window for him or something. Words to that effect, that it's a good thing for him to earn a contract somewhere else. And I thought it's such a crazy thing to say, in my opinion. Because I'm looking at that thinking, that's really counterproductive for the kind of environment you need to set up at United at the moment.
Yeah.
But then someone came out and said,
it has to be competitive. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're just basically saying that. But it's the same, it's not just Pogba. I'm Pogba's biggest critic in terms of he's played well in a handful of games. Well, should we say 20% of games he's played well in? And I might be being generous with that since he's come back and played for United. So I don't want to get on his back too much because this isn't just about Pogba. It's about Lingard. It's about Martial. Players who have done things where you say, oh, well, they won't play again. And then they're back in the squad and on the pitch in the next game. And it's like, it's not to do with that they shouldn't play again or that they've desecrated the badge or anything. It's the inconsistency of standard, what you're setting from the top.
Yes,
But the problem comes, Ed, when the fact, and someone pointed it out to me, and they're quite right, and you just mentioned it earlier, the manager himself is interim.
It's all about accountability, and it all comes from the top. I had a long discussion with Dan at the weekend about this. The lack of accountability from the top causes all the problem. We talked about it earlier this season.
Yeah.
But even from the manager's point of view, it's a hell of a difficult position to be in, where he's interim. It seems pretty clear now. I guess Pochettino's people are making it known that United are still having those discussions, right? They do talk a lot, Poch's people. I don't think there's any doubt about what he wants. So it seems fairly clear that United are looking around, looking to make a permanent appointment. Don't see Rangnick as that permanent man, which leaves a credibility vacuum for Rangnick, who's trying to get something out of players, some of which are ultra professional and demanding of others. Ronaldo, for all his many sins, it's hard to question that part of his character. And some of which are on the other scale of either on the verge of letting their careers drift or have already done that. Anthony Martial, you mentioned. And that's a really difficult environment to be in, and especially where you have this kind of credibility gap. Not in terms of his CV, Rangnick, but in terms of his position at the club in that role as manager, interim manager.
Yeah, because if you've got a manager who's in for the long haul now, then there's definitely a more convincing argument to say there's more value of putting Pogba out to pasture for the next 3 months to say, no, you can't play for a move, because they don't get a transfer fee for him. I know he's one of the best players that we've got. You can see already the value in trying McTominay in a different position. You've got to try him because there's obviously some kind of potential in there. So McTominay and Fred, for whatever purpose they've got to serve the club in the next 3 or 4 years, you've got to find out how good that is in the next 3 or 4 months. So I'm not saying build the midfield around them, but obviously they're not going to buy one this window. So you've just got to look at what you've got. And those are the obvious two. And Donny van der Beek, who will never get a game ever again.
No, he didn't even get his customary 2 minutes today, did
Unbelievable.
he? I'd be asking for the transfer tomorrow if I was Donny. It's in his contract, 2 to 5 minutes every game, guaranteed.
Exactly. But that's it. So you've got the likes of, Pogba and Martial and Lingard. But Pogba, obviously, he stands out, firstly, because of the personality that he is. Secondly, because of this on-off, well, off-off relationship we've had for 4 years when he's been in the squad. And also the fact that he's one of the most talented players we've got in the biggest problem area that we've got, and it's never worked. The message that you'd be sending if you've got the permanent man in charge, or the man who's in charge, and he's got the direction and he's the one sort of leading the ship moving forward, you would know that there's a certainty in there that if he's saying, well, Pogba's not going to be playing a big part because we need application and dedication to the cause. And Fergie did it countless times with big names.
Got rid of them frequently, didn't he? Yeah. Not to relitigate his success or otherwise at United, because that has been covered in many, many places. But going forward, it seems clear to everyone that he's leaving. The chances of him signing a new contract appear to be slim. I suppose United could take it right down to the wire like they did with David De Gea and throw a huge amount of money at him and he'll just look around. And it may well be that like with David De Gea, it becomes a millstone and a totem that other players would look at if that happened. For all his mercurial talents, Pogba, it may be a disaster for everyone if he signed on. May not, who knows? But the question of him actually playing or not comes down to, does the manager believe he's fully in for the next few months? Can he make a contribution? On balance, what's the trade-off between short-term and longer-term needs? Yeah. And United making that trade-off as well with Elanga, Rashford and Greenwood in forward positions when they have Cavani, who's definitely going in the summer, and Ronaldo, who's got 18 months left on his deal and is 38 in a couple of months' time. So you're making all these trade-offs. So with Pogba, it'd come down to that conversation that has apparently happened between Pogba and Rangnick and about the dedication. It's a weird way of phrasing it, putting himself in the shop window. It should be, he just wants to win for now. We have other precedents, don't we? Because Eriksen was basically frozen out of the team at Spurs before he left. And, it's clear that he wanted to go. Wasn't running out of contract, but it was clear. We know from the documentary as well. Said it very politely, but said he wanted to go. Donnarumma played all the games for Milan and there was never a hint he was ever going to be dropped before he moved to Paris Saint-Germain. Wijnaldum played almost every game for Liverpool before he moved on a free as well. So it kind of depends on the personality, doesn't it?
It does, but also United have got this culture that they're trying to rectify of wanting application and they need like that extra 10%. And Pogba, even if he gave you the extra 10%, you wouldn't be able to see in his expression that he's giving it you. I'm not criticising him because that's the way that he is as a player, and for his good and his bad. He's just what he is, and we know what he is. And, and he has had some great days. And by all accounts, he's a very popular lad in the dressing room, and he's not like a very divisive figure in that respect. So it's very difficult to know where the good lad and the good player, that sort of thing, where obviously that line was very blurry under Solskjaer.
I don't think the kind of media narrative helps. I guess we're part of this media narrative, aren't we? But I do get the sense, without really knowing, that the dynamic between Pogba and the club and his teammates and the manager is very different than the one that's played out in public. But anyway, he's almost certainly leaving in the summer. It'd be amazing if he stays. Amazing as in surprising.
In the literal sense of the word.
Almost certainly going as well as Anthony Martial. I don't know when it'll be, whether it's this January or in the summer, but there doesn't seem much of a road back. The comments in which Rangnick, and I don't know whether it's the subtleties of the language when he said he didn't want to play. Now, we know this with Martial. He's done this before when he doesn't quite feel right. He says, I'm not ready. I can't play. Now, I suspect it was that rather than I'm not playing, which is the way that Rangnick made it sound. And Martial obviously made the posting afterwards on Instagram to deny it. It seems like they've cleared the air because he was on the bench and he wouldn't be if there was no way back for him. And by the way, Cavani's done the same thing. When he doesn't feel 100%, he'll tell the medical staff. And the medical staff and Cavani have differed on this one. There's some good reporting around that. This is definitely true. He'll say, look, I'm not ready. And the medical staff will have no explanation for it. And I don't think anyone would get on Cavani's back.
No,
for very different reasons.
You're exactly right. And Rangnick did actually say, didn't he, a few weeks ago? He said something like, Edinson told me that he wasn't ready to play or something like that. He actually came out and said, I do think, you're probably right that there was some kind of miscommunication between the two, if we're going to be fair. But I've got a little bit of sympathy for Martial as well in this because he, again, his biggest critic. But when you look at the way that he was treated quite badly under Mourinho, now there's a double argument with this because you could argue that at one point when he was surplus to requirements, say 2018, when he was actively trying to move him, and obviously a year before that he tried to get Perisic, so obviously Martial was never really in his plans. He took the number 9 shirt off him, all that sort of palaver. I had that argument, but I would have it with any manager. You back the manager, and even if he's going to sell the most popular player, back the manager because he's the one in charge and he's meant to live and die by those decisions. Woodward obviously intervened when he wanted to sell Martial. We all know everything about what's happened with Martial. Obviously, he came into the side. I always felt his first season, obviously, he was at his best in the first season where he was taking a lot of people by surprise. But ever since then, you haven't really seen a forward who's looked like he could dominate or terrify a top defence. I don't think we've ever seen him do it. And I don't want to be too mean. He's obviously got a lot of potential, but those best games have come against the Norwiches and stuff. He's had his moments. He's had his moments against Chelsea or City a couple of times. I know
season before last, he got 20 or something.
No, he's obviously a good goal scorer. His best goals you've seen, normally they've been the goals that he scored against Stoke or Norwich, where they've given him a little bit of space on the edge of the box and he's belted it in the top corner. There's a player in there, he's got talent. And over the last sort of few months, he's not going to be playing in the system. We know that. He was a favourite under Solskjaer for a bit, but I think his drop-off in form really coincided with Cavani, because Cavani's a different kind of player. So when he was coming into the side and he was pressing and showing this kind of emergency, because we haven't seen that for 4 or 5 years in a forward. We haven't seen it since Rooney at his pomp, really.
True, yeah.
Or Chicharito. So we haven't seen a player hunting in the way that Cavani was doing. And it was like, oh my God, that's what a United striker sometimes does. And it changed the dynamic for Martial, unfortunately, because he's not that kind of player. So now you've got this situation where, to be fair to him as well, as soon as the nonsense came out, his agent came out and said something, and Rangnick called that out, and he went straight to Martial, and Martial said that straight to him, I'm requesting a transfer, I want to leave. So that's all been done perfectly fine.
And I think that's fair all around, isn't it? He needs to move on, the club needs to move on. His agent needs to now go find him a club.
The same argument for Pogba. It's not the stage for him. And there's a player in there. Let him find his stage elsewhere, because it does nobody any good keeping players in systems they don't fit, in a place that they don't want to be, in a place where the fans are divided against that player anyway. So they've got they've got to turn a consensus around against them. And they're talented players. You know what I mean? It's just time for everyone to make this change. And it's just a bit unfortunate that you see the not bitterness, but the bitty stuff come out. Like, he's refused to play, blah, blah, blah. We can be better than that.
It didn't help that it was in the press, basically. But you can understand why. He wants to go. His agent made it public and is basically just telling the world that he's available. Another player that it's fair to say divides opinion and has not been very good recently is Marcus Rashford. But he got United's 3rd tonight. And it was a really nice finish as well. And in similar situations in recent months, he might have duffed that at the keeper, but somehow found enough power and accuracy to put that in the top corner. I'm shocked, actually, when it happened.
Yeah, I was so sorry for him. Not so sorry. I felt so sorry for him when saw him play against Villa in the cup. Everyone was on his back. They were saying, "Oh, he looks disinterested." I didn't see that. I saw a player who looked like he cared way too much.
I never believe the disinterested argument against almost all of these players. I think there's lack of confidence, lack of form, lack of understanding with the system. The amount of times United came back under Solskjaer and came back from goals down dozens and dozens of times. This wasn't a team that didn't care. For me, there's more fundamental problems than that. And with Marcus, he cares. He cares. He cares loads. He cares too much,
about everything, and that's why we love him. He's a national hero and Manchester's hero. And he's absolutely why we love him. And you can feel it when there's a player who represents the club and city in the way that he does. You do feel it more. It was the same argument, by the way, if you'll allow me, just a little diversion, of when everyone used to say about Solskjaer, when they said, "Oh, you're just supporting him because he's a legend." The arguments, it's another grey area, because the knock-on point from that is, will it mean more if we win something with Solskjaer as manager? And obviously it would. And that's where we are with Rashford, is that it means more because of who he is and because of where he's come from. It obviously does. So when you see him struggling, and especially because of everything that he's done, because he's a national hero, and because you know that he cares. And Ed, it's a run of form. It's a run of form. Now, his run of form, it may be dropping off to being an average Premier League footballer. It might be dropping off to be a Championship level footballer. He might be a very good Champions League level footballer. We don't know. We're watching that happen. We got to support him. And I felt so sorry for him when I watched him play against Villa, because nothing that he was trying was coming off. And we had this, I think it was the Wolves game where we saw him. And I said, when he tried that pass, when he was moved to right wing back and he tried this pass and it was massively overhit, and you just saw a player whose confidence was on the floor. And when you see that, it just made, well, for me, I'm speaking personally for me, it makes me feel sorry when I look at those players, because I think that the pressure that they're under is, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, this is the worst United team since the one that got relegated," and even worse than that because they don't like the people who are in it. And it's a lot of weight for those players to carry, especially Marcus. There are goals that make you feel emotional for watching, and they really effectively mean nothing. But that was one. You remember the one where Ollie actually came back after his long injury layoff and scored at Charlton? He's been out for 3 years. It's something like that. I know it's not the same journey that he's been on, but when you see him strike with confidence, and where's that Marcus been? And hopefully he's on his way back.
I know it's a cliche, but those little things do, you hear the old pros talk about it all the time. Just one thing can, and confidence comes coursing back. And I really hope that's the case for Marcus, because we need him, but he needs it. And I think, look, football is about emotions. Otherwise, it's a game of Football Manager with the emotions taken out of it. Actually, football is not played out in buying and selling players like they're trading cards. Although this time of year, you wouldn't believe it, would you?
No, exactly.
It seems to be the most important game, the transfer market, but it is a game of emotions. That's why we were all affected when fans weren't in stadiums. The product, quote unquote, wasn't as good, because the atmosphere means something, and the emotion attached to Marcus and what he means to the club and the city does mean more than just some other player. So it should do. So, look, great for him. Great for Greenwood to get a goal as well, because he's had 935 shots in the last game. Give or take a few.
Yeah, may not be statistically correct, but he was getting up there, wasn't he? Yeah,
rounding error.
Almost as many shots as United have had corners without scoring.
Oh my God, 100 and odd without scoring from not just corners. It's all set pieces. Bloody shocking statistic. I can't remember his name. Our new set pieces coach, really earning his corn. Ramsey, that's it, Ramsey. It was a set piece that United conceded from as well, wasn't it? Wasn't it Brentford corner? I'm kind of.
It was. I'd love to. No, it was a throw in. It was a throw in. I would love to know. I wouldn't. I'd dread to know, but someone could probably find this out. How many goals United have conceded from attacking set pieces? Because since they last scored one, because it's going to be
quite a lot.
There's going to be a couple, 2 or 3 at least. Because they were in that position.
Duncan Alexander on Twitter, he'll
exactly. There were 2 or 3 situations like that tonight where we could have easily been done, but we had De Gea to thank for that. Positionally, sometimes we look all over the place. For a team who's susceptible for counters on corners,
Yeah.
we just look like it's never happened before. You're like, oh, this happens frequently.
I was having a dig at Harry Maguire earlier, obviously, which I like to do. Not because I particularly hate him or anything. I just, anyway. Look, I could get into a long discussion about him.
Comforting. It's comforting.
It is comforting. There was some newspaper tittle-tattle about Rangnick apparently going to his new overlord in Richard Arnold and saying that Maguire alongside Shaw and Wan-Bissaka are not good enough for United and United will need to replace them. Don't know the veracity of that or not, although I think we could all see with our own eyes how good those three have been this season. Not very is the truth. I mean, there's nobody in United's defensive ranks or goalkeeping ranks that should feel safe in their position. Perhaps only Rafael Varane, and it's only because he's brand new and his injuries mean that he's a concern as well. But yeah, Maguire's first two major contributions were to give the ball away and put Brentford through on a good attacking situation and then have one bounce off his leg and into a Brentford player. I think maybe Fred had a swipe at it to try and clear it as well before Brentford scored. It wasn't a good look. Not all Harry's fault. I'll forgive him that one. Only half a pre-assist for the Brentford goal.
When you see players in bad form or who aren't good, they make players around them look bad. And
yeah.
I sometimes worry that we've had defenders, I'm not going to call them out because I'm sure we can all remember some in history. There are players who, when Ferdinand was first in the side and he looked like a joker, and then suddenly you had good defenders around him and he looked like a Rolls Royce, like he was. So you have that problem now, I think, because we've got such an odd bunch of combinations, players who aren't complementary to each other, that they are going to do stuff like that. And Maguire, can you remember when Maguire first signed and he was dropping off 2 or 3 yards? And it was famously a game against Arsenal at Old Trafford. And and Villa as well. I think we conceded goals where he was just dropping off 2 or 3 yards too deep, and
he doesn't have confidence in his own pace.
Yeah, I think that, and also the fact that at that point he'd been with the club for 2 or 3 months. So how are they getting these combinations that wrong? That you've got to. Maguire should have said to someone, by the way, guys, I like to start 2 or 3 yards deeper than you, so you'd better watch your line. But there's no communication there. And then you see him play, and it's a little bit erratic when he comes on. It's a strange one because you look at those 3 players and you say Wan-Bissaka defensively is probably the best on form defensively. His tackles are great. Luke Shaw offensively probably the best. If he on form again, we're talking on the way that he drives the ball.
His numbers offensively, that's the whole range of attacking numbers, are still very good for fullbacks this season. He's right up there, which for a really crappy season would surprise me when I saw the numbers. I was looking at it. Wan-Bissaka, yeah, he's great in the one-on-one. Positionally, I don't trust him.
He's gone to pot this season positionally. It's unbelievable.
Grace Robertson did a really good newsletter on him this week and pointed some other analysis, which I thought was really useful. You'll be able to find it if you go search around on Wan-Bissaka and just like where he is now. 2.5 years into his United career. And honestly and sadly, for a player of his expense and promise, he really hasn't progressed, has he? In some cases, may have even regressed in terms of his confidence.
No, yeah, you're right. A couple of years ago, 18 months ago, I talked to Richard Shaw, who was the youth team coach at Palace. I was talking to him for the Cantona book that I was writing, and obviously he had a bit of a part to play.
They had a little part.
He was central to the narrative on the day. So I was talking to him, and the popular question at the time was, "Oh, do you think Wan-Bissaka could play in a central role?" And he said no. He was absolutely taken aback by that. He said no because he needs people speaking around him all the time, and he was a natural winger and everything like that. It's funny that you mentioned the way that people are talking about him at the moment. I do a weekly podcast with Paul Parker, and I talked to him this week, and one of the questions put to him in our chat was, what do you think on United's fullback situation? And this podcast made press. I don't know why, because I didn't think there was anything particularly controversial in there, but there was about 4 or 5 comments that Paul made in the podcast that just made press everywhere. The one thing that didn't make press was the most pertinent point that he made in the entire hour, which was I'd need new fullbacks on either side if they want to challenge for the title. And
Yeah,
I mean,
I think he's right.
no, I think he is. Sure, you're absolutely right. His numbers are great, and in spite of everything, when he's got the ball at his feet, he seems to make good decisions. But when the ball is not in his possession, he makes horrendous decisions. He's the number of times you've mentioned Wan-Bissaka's position, and these are the kind of things that when you sat at either side, like if you're either in the East Stand or the Stretford end, and you've seen the game in front of you, when you see how badly the position is, like Wan-Bissaka's against City they played him a fool in that game. But Shaw he always makes the gamble for bouncing balls that he's nowhere near. And you can see the thought process goes through as the ball's bouncing. You can see he goes like, I'm not going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. He literally has that conversation with himself, and he always misses it every single time.
Probably the kind of thing that Mourinho was referring to when he
probably
it was rather cruel when he said had to do his thinking for him. Yeah, United won't sign 4 fullbacks, but if you were to think about building a title-winning team, you probably would. The thing with that Rangnick supposed conversation I thought about was, my God, he's talking about players that United spent 150 million on in the transfer market and are earning 500 grand a week, let's just say, between them. And it's a hell of an investment. And there will be the calculation at the club. It's a sunk cost now, but there's definitely will be the calculation that those assets have a value. And it will be hard to move them on even if the new manager wanted to. It would be very hard to realise some kind of value from those assets. So it's going to be a problem. Whoever the new guy is, if it's not going to be Rangnick, will have to find a way to get something more out of all of those.
So Ollie obviously wanted Trippier at the start of the season. And I always made a point about how United, or the manager, whoever the manager is, over a period of time, and Mourinho famously wasn't allowed this because the argument about him not getting centre-backs was the centre-backs you bought were rubbish. And so fast forward 3 years, and Solskjaer wasn't allowed to buy Trippier, not because of Wan-Bissaka or anything. It was just because obviously the Glazers wanted 15 million for themselves, and they didn't want to give it for a fullback. But one of the big problems that United are going to have until they give a manager this amount of time is letting that manager handle the transition within a transition. So you know that these players aren't going to be good enough to win a league. We all know that. Maguire's probably not going to captain a United winning side. But the only comparison I want to make of a Fergie one that's valid, that I think is valid now from the Solskjaer era, is that you look at the likes of like Donaghy and Webb and Wallace, players who he brought in towards the start of his reign who weren't going to be challenging in a team that's going to win a league title. They weren't going to be part of it. But he was still allowed the opportunity to bring that player in and get rid of him. Jim Leighton, famously. So you've got players like that. You're not always going to, from where we were, 6, you're going to need players to take you up to 2nd or 3rd. And United I don't know what it is, if it's the board or if it's the support. There's just this automatic thing where United buy a player for 50 million and, that player's going to win us the league. Give him time to see if they will or won't. And if they don't, don't they're still going to need to replace the player, even if they replace the manager. And the value that you're getting back in the manager and allowing him to make that mistake and control the dressing room is like you're saying, all right, I made a mistake, but I can move on.
I do think that's a really fair point. The modern way, of course, of thinking about that kind of squad management in 5-year timeframes is with the director of football, which United haven't had. Murtagh and I guess Fletcher as his sidekick as the technical director now have that job. I don't know how much autonomy they'll have under the Richard Arnold regime. We'll see. That's what they're there for, to manage that squad over a period of time. Let's move on before we close out. West Ham at the weekend at Old Trafford. What have we got to say about this? Moyes' West Ham lost to Leeds at the weekend. It was a fun game. Moyes has had this kind of transformation, hasn't he? He's built West Ham. They're currently 4th. They played a game more than United, 3 games more than Spurs, and 2 more than Arsenal. So, they might not stay there for that long. But still, that's an overperformance. And the biggest praise you can say, he's finally got the West Ham fans off his back. And suddenly they love the London Stadium. I think it's still called that, don't they? Because West Ham are playing well.
Exactly. But what I think about this for United is that obviously you look at the Brentford game, that was postponed and rearranged. When it was originally put in place, it would have been a terrible time for us to have played Brentford. So it got rearranged. They had a couple of bad results, and it was an ideal time to play for them because obviously the confidence was on the floor a little bit. I think we're in that stage with West Ham. Famous last words, but they lost against Leeds. They know they're overperforming. They know that they're way above where they're expected to be. So they're probably, we've seen it traditionally with David Moyes teams. They do drop off when they know that they're overperforming. And we never had that problem, unfortunately, with David. But every other David Moyes team seems to have that problem. And maybe that's another sign of luck that's coming around the corner for us. And to be fair, Rangnick could do with that kind of luck. He needs that kind of luck at the moment. Like, it's a good time for United to play someone like, I think we've got Burnley coming up.
Yeah.
So we might do, depending if we get to play them, if they're ever going to play again.
We'll see. I mean, who knows what the rules are? Yeah, I mean, Burnley are like 16 games behind everyone else, aren't they? I mean, I say flippantly, who knows what the rules are, but literally, who knows what the rules are? Arsenal had 2 COVID cases at the weekend and managed to get a game called off. West Ham's problem partly has been injuries. Of course, they've had quite a lot of injuries, and it's disrupted their squad, which isn't the biggest of squads. Look, they lost against Leeds, but that could have gone either way. Leeds, they played the same way every week and get very, very different results all of the time. They beat Norwich before that. West Ham beat Leeds in the Cup. This is a Leeds game with about 15 teenagers in it, though. And they beat Palace before that and Watford before that. So it's not like they're in bad form, but the injuries, maybe a little dip, pressure building, expectations building. Yeah, I'd probably, especially United winning today, I feel better about this, obviously. But just that little bit of confidence that we don't go there with the Hammers crowd up for it, putting pressure on United straight away. You know where that leads. So I feel a little more confident as a result.
No, yeah, me too. I think as well, Saturday, 3:00, nice to have one of those. Might get a different atmosphere. You're quite right in West Ham. It's not necessarily a bad run of form. It's just, I think sometimes when you look at the other thing that you've got with United is that, and we've done this traditionally for a few years, so I don't want to end on a downer when we've won tonight and played quite well in the second half. But don't United always have this knack of doing just enough or less than just enough? So when you think that they're going to be challenging for fourth again, well, they'll probably just match the worst result of the weekend and just stay in contention for it. So you say, oh, mathematically they could do it until such time. Until we finish second, that was the pattern that we found ourselves in.
Well, it does look like a four-way race for fourth. United and Arsenal on 35 points, Spurs on 36, West Ham on 37. There's a wildly different number of games played. But if the fourth place trophy is all we've got to fight for, then this is a really critical game.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not like you, more positive after tonight, but we've been put through the ringer so many times with United, haven't we? So who knows what to expect.
It's always the way. Anyway, I guess we'll leave it there for this week. Good to speak to you again, Wayne. Where can people find you?
Wayne S. Barton, they can find me on my social media.
On your social media and Talk of the Devils website and pod as well. Yeah, great to speak to you again. No doubt we'll be speaking again soon. And touch wood victory at the weekend. Need that momentum. It's been a sort of in and out start, hasn't it, under Rangnick? Yes. And a second win in a row would make us all feel much better. If you like the show, the way you can support us best is by leaving us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And it really doesn't matter what you say in that review either. You can say you'd rather we talked about Manchester City and Liverpool. Just hit those 5 stars. Many thanks.